So with that said, let me introduce you to today's presenter, Laura Roos. Laura has been working in the healthcare and education fields for the past 15 years, focusing on administration, implementation, training, and educational resources. Laura holds a master's degree in adult education and training and is a self-professed curriculum development nerd and a foodie. She's been known to tap dance from time to time as well. Laura's been working with NHA's clients, candidates, and product development team, focusing on best practices and creating helpful tools, videos, and walkthroughs for all of NHA's users. And as a client experience partner and training specialist, Laura is excited to bring her knowledge of educational theory together with her understanding of NHA's suite of resources to help clarify the steps to help you achieve the most successful exam day possible. So we're excited to have Laura present the rest of the content to you today. Thank you again for joining us. And Laura, it is all yours.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for letting me be here. I'm really excited. We're going to dive in and look over, really what it means to be a proctor for one of NHA's high stakes exams, and also some key things to know prior to running an on-site test. So thanks again for joining us. We're going to review all of the resources and tools that you have available to you to make sure that that exam day, again, for both you and your students, is a successful one. We'll cover all of these topics today. So as you have questions, again, please post the questions in the Q&A box so we can try and get to all of them. And if we can't, we'll be able to follow up with you afterwards. The chat box is more for the conversation, and the Q&A is really where we want you to post any specific questions. So thanks so much. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. So the first step to proctoring one of NHA's exams is actually becoming a proctor, but not everyone can or should proctor our high stakes exams. So NHA has what's called a proctor handbook. It's available on our website, and it covers the basics of who can and can't proctor, what it means to proctor, and making sure that everything is ready for exam day. This is a really important document to understand what proctoring is and what the security measures around the process need to be. For any of your questions like what to do if a student is caught cheating or what needs to be in the testing room itself, this is your first place to check. The Proctor Handbook will walk you through who should and shouldn't proctor and what it means to have what's called a conflict of interest. This is a legal way to say that you have too much stake in the outcome of the exam. So people who should proctor or can proctor, as long as they are over 18, are people in other departments. If you have a dedicated testing center or technology center, an employee from either of those, or even an administrative assistant or librarian. Now, that conflict of interest means that no one who is in the classroom with the students, or even program administrators, directors, anyone who has a lot of direct contact with the student and maybe just a little too involved, these people should not be in the testing room during the exam. Also, take note of some of the other pieces for proctoring, such as the proctor to student ratio, or who can or can't test on site when you might not be eligible to proctor due to testing for the exam yourself. So these are all parts that are in that proctor handbook. So to become a proctor, you first need to be invited to your NHA account from an existing account administrator. You'll receive an email to log in for the first time where you can update your login details to one you'll remember, which is important because you'll use this login on exam day. From there, you can complete the proctor training, which should be only about 15 to 20 minutes of your time, but walks you through all of the steps and ethical requirements. This should be completed as soon as you can, ideally at least 30 days before the exam date, but no later than 10 days before, so that you have enough time to familiarize yourself with your tools and ensure that the testing space will be ready on exam day. When you first log in at nhanow.com, you can see the prompt to become a proctor here. This training will need to be renewed annually, but only if you are still proctoring. You'll receive reminder emails to renew your proctor training when the time is right, But if you are no longer responsible to proctor, you can ignore those. Only complete the training the next year if you are still in this role. But what do proctors even do? Well, you're responsible to prepare the exam room, print off the rosters, confirm student identities to that roster, ensuring that their names match what's on their government-issued photo ID. And most importantly, monitor the students during the exam. If there are any issues or irregularities, which could include an instance of cheating, or even if the power goes out during a test, you will be responsible to submit an incident form so NHA can address anything that we may need, from withdrawing a certification to resetting an exam availability for a student. You are not proctoring remote exams. Students can't take an exam with you via Zoom or through any online format. As Susan mentioned earlier, NHA uses a different tool, PSI, at the moment for any remote tests. So please do not attempt to proctor if the students aren't with you live in the room. You also don't have the authority to extend test times or provide any accommodation needs without NHA's advance approval. We're going to cover this more in a moment, but if a student needs to submit a request for an accommodation because of an IEP or 504, that's the student's responsibility to do at least a month before the exam date. You must stay in the testing room for the duration of the exam unless there's an alternative proctor there to relieve you. Exam dates need to be created in advance, and students should have their applications done no later than the week before the test. Again, we're going to walk through the timeline on this more in just a little bit. You are also not responsible to register students for their tests. That's something they need to do. During the application process, a student signs a legal form called an attestation, confirming their identity, their ethical responsibility, and eligibility to test. Again, this should happen no later than the week prior to the test. And hopefully this one makes sense. You should not answer any questions on the test, right? That's kind of the biggest piece there. So what's allowed in the exam room? Well, each candidate can have 2 sheets of blank paper, which you can provide. You are the only one who can provide that. And you also need to collect those at the end of the exam. They can also have 2 number 2 pencils, which they need to bring. They can't have any other resources in the exam room. The only exception is with the NHA CBCS exam. That's the Certified Billing and Coding Specialist test. Those specific students are required to bring their 3 coding manuals into the room. These can have personal notes written in them, as well as tabs on the pages, but cannot be an ebook or include any additional inserted pages. These would need to be removed prior to the start of the exam. Other items not allowed would include any personal things like a cell phone, a coat, a purse, but exceptions should be made for any religious clothing. In addition, there is no food or drink allowed during the exam unless pre-approved for medical purposes. And students can't bring in their own calculators. All necessary calculations will have resources available within the exam format. Okay, so I just wanted to ask a quick question. I'm going to post another poll here. How many of you have already completed your proctor training? So you should see that now. I just want to see, just on average, if this is something we're reviewing or new. We're going to let this be open for just a second. I want to kind of capture where we're at with everybody. All right, we got about 75% of everybody who's posted. All right, we're going to close this up in just another second or two. Let's see here. Okay, so it looks like almost everybody who's with us today has already completed their proctor training. Great. Some others still need to do that. That's okay. It'll only take you 15 minutes. And a couple here just for information. So that's great. Thanks everybody for answering that. I appreciate it. Okay, So with those of you who have already completed your training, hopefully a lot of what we're about to cover is review, but let's talk about the resources available to you as a proctor for this program. So once you've completed the proctor training, you will then also have access to something called the proctor manual. It's different than the handbook. It's also called the process guide. This manual is your direct roadmap to the exam process and is what you'll use before and during the exam to make sure everything is in order. It's a downloadable PDF that also includes the entire proctor script. It has resource links and information about any testing irregularities and what to do about them. NHA's Help Center is also here for you to cover a variety of needs. We have our live chat and 800 number who are available to answer emergency questions. Though they do run extended hours, they are not 24-hour and are closed on national holidays. So if you have a test coming up over a 3-day weekend, look ahead to make sure everything is set up. This is also where you can locate any incident forms, technical requirements for the testing and computers, as well as FAQs, frequently asked questions. To help you with all of these processes, also through your NHA website, you have access to our how-to library. This includes walkthroughs on becoming or renewing your proctor status, a short video that walks you through a proctoring process, and we'll also be sending you reminders through your login email to maintain your proctor training. Again, the how-tos available are there also for students that include, what to do to reschedule their exams or if they need to test third party. So that library has a lot of great resources in it. So let's take a look at some of the best practices for that successful exam day. Be sure to have a few things ready, like the proctor manual and also the test plan for the exam you'll be proctoring. During the test script, you need to inform students of how long the exam will be and how many questions they'll have. And this information is found on the NHA test plan. There's a direct link to this through your website. Also be sure to have noted the live chat feature on our website to ensure that in case of an emergency or urgent need, you can access NHA's client care team. Our help center on the website will outline their available hours and if they'll be closed for, again, any additional days such as 3-day weekends and holidays. One of the key pieces for you is to know when exams are scheduled, as well as how many students will be attending. And you can actually do this from your NHA login by selecting the Upcoming Exams button. This is going to take you to the institution's exam calendar. This calendar will default to a view of just the next 30 days, but it does open up, as you can see here, to a 90-day window. This page gives you all of the information you need about the upcoming exams, starting with the exam date. This is the date the exam will run for your candidates. You will also see the application deadline. This is the last day that students can apply for the exam and should be the week prior to the test. Technically, it's 8 days before because they have through the end of this day. All applications should be done prior to 11:59 p.m. Central Time on this date in order to test the following week. You can also see how many students are on that roster. This is important to know so you know how many proctors you will need. Again, the proctor to student ratio should never exceed 25 students to a single proctor. You will see what exams may be running at this time. You'll want to be sure and check the length and question number from those test plans to be sure you provide your students with the correct information. The exam status is really important. As you can see here, the first test is in what's called sent status, which is the necessary status for an exam to be live to proctor on exam day. If that test doesn't go through the final phase of processing, it will remain in a closed status, as you can see here from the July 29th test. In this instance, when you show up to proctor, there wouldn't be an exam available for you. Now, this is easy to fix, but much better to discover before test day, especially if you're testing over a weekend. Keep an eye on this page to make sure that this status transitions from closed to sent. This should happen automatically 3 business days before the exam date. So check your exam statuses within that 3-day window to be sure everything is ready to go. So before the exam, the roster should be finalized within that 3-day window. And you need to have this printed to have documentation of your students and confirm their information on test day. You access this through the View Exam Rosters feature. Select the exam date that you need from the drop-down list, and then you can click on the link on the bottom right corner to print the roster. Now, if for some reason the roster looks wrong, then take a note of the existing filter in the top right corner. If this is set to pending approval, not all students will be on the list that you need to print. Be sure to check that this is filtered to approved students, so your roster is accurate. On exam day, you will use this to confirm the candidate names. Remember, they have to match their government-issued photo ID. Only that one student can take their exam. So if the names don't match, then they aren't allowed to test. You may be required, depending on your role at your institution, to actually schedule the exam dates. So this feature isn't available to all proctors. If you're supposed to also schedule those dates, but don't see this request new exam option, then connect with your campus or your administrator there to make sure that your administrative privileges need to be updated. Selecting this should open your information page, and you can type in your required exam date and also select the application deadline. The calendar helps you to identify what the 8 days prior to the exam need to be to make sure everything is set up correctly. And then you put in the registration deadline. You will also have some open fields to complete if you choose. These are optional. The exam details will be any details you need to be visible to your candidates during the application process. So for example, if there's an AM or a PM test, or the start time of the test, this could even be a teacher's name for a course, or what building or classroom an exam will be in. Purchase orders aren't used for everyone, but if one does need to be on the final invoice for an institution, please be sure it's listed now. We can't add a purchase order number after an exam is finalized. So if you have one, put it in there. Sorry, that's that little button for that one. The bottom of this page will give you the option to select the exam or exams that will run at this time. Please know students won't be able to select more than one test at a time. And if concurrent exams need to run, please see the Proctor Handbook to address timeline requirements. This is also important as not all tests run on the same amount of time. Our medical assistant and billing and coding tests, for example, both run 3 hours maximum, whereas other tests may only be 2 hours long. Running multiple exams that are different timelines can actually cause an issue if you're the only proctor present. Unless another proctor is with you, students must stay until the final exam closes. So a candidate whose test is only 2 hours long, for example, would have to wait until the 3-hour test is completed. Now, if you have a second proctor, they can escort students out as they complete the test, collecting any scratch paper beforehand, but it's really a best practice not to schedule exams that are different times in length. You are not responsible to reschedule absent students or candidates. Anyone who misses an exam needs to go through their own candidate account to reschedule the test. Your institution does need to have an open test date available for them to do so, but you can't change a student's registration for them. For on-site exams, this does not charge the students an additional cost. But for any candidates testing off-site, they have to reschedule their exams at least 24 hours prior to their scheduled test, or they can forfeit the exam fee. So again, this is not your responsibility to do. The candidates need to do this themselves. Okay, so I wanted to stop here and just find out if there are any kind of big questions that have been posted, if there's anything we want to address before we dive into the next part of the presentation. Susan, Mary, have there been anything kind of that we want to make sure we address?
No, I think we're good. A few had asked about water bottles being available, but right now, currently, we do not permit anything in that testing area.
That's correct, unless medically approved in advance, right? Good. Okay, well, thank you. Just wanted to take a little breather there, make sure everybody was tracking. So let's go ahead and talk about the exam timeline. Now that we've seen some of the processes, we're going to look at kind of a best practice for what the time is leading up to an actual exam. So we're going to review everything we've talked about. But before we get into some of the most frequently asked questions, we're going to take the major players on the countdown one at a time, knowing, of course, that programs do vary in lengths. So your involvement really doesn't start until around 30 days before the exam date. We will count down each week and take a look at the day before the exam and the exam itself. So around this time, 3 to 4 weeks before the test, you should begin or have already completed your proctor training through the NHA website. If you need or want any additional training, reach out to your institution's NHA representative to request that training is scheduled with someone from my team, the client experience team, to help. It's a good idea also to have a backup proctor just in case something happens and you can't be there for the exam. So log in to your NHA account and check the upcoming exams field to be sure that the test date is already created. Ideally, students and candidates should already be starting those applications by this point. Remember, this isn't something you do, but you'll be able to watch if any candidates have applied for the test in your upcoming exams button. This is important to know how many proctors you may need on exam day. As I mentioned earlier, any candidate who may be eligible to request a special accommodation needs to do this now. Now, this is not your responsibility to submit, and you can't grant or approve special accommodations. They have to be submitted by the candidate in advance with adequate documentation, like an IEP or 504. And then it gets reviewed internally here at NHA through our compliance department. Students who are approved may need a second exam date scheduled or additional needs set up. They will need to communicate with the institution, and it is their responsibility at the school or location to implement those changes. So be sure to check with your administrator if there are anybody who will need those special accommodations. 2 weeks before you're scheduled to proctor an exam is the right time to review the NHA resources, those how-to guides and video walkthroughs. Read through, again, the proctor handbook and manual so you can address any possible needs or issues within the testing space. That includes making sure that your IT team has reviewed the technical requirements to test and all of the computers are equipped. Candidates should be applying or already completed with their applications by this point, which you can see again through the exam calendar in the upcoming exams button. Any accommodations that have been approved are the schools, and so likely your responsibility to help implement. By this time, candidates should be in communication with NHA and know if they have any accommodations needing special assistance or a different exam date. If they do need to reschedule or have an alternative room, like a reader or something different set up than the standard exam room procedure, now is a good time to make sure everything is taken care of. The week before the exam is when registration closes for students. Anyone who has not applied before this time will need to have an alternative or additional test date created for them. Based on the now visible roster, check to see if there will be a need for any additional proctors. Is there a backup in case something happens? Or if there are more than 25 candidates testing, you need to have a second proctor in the room. This is also the right time to look further at the proctor handbook and manual. Make sure the room will be well equipped to handle the exam needs. Connecting with IT on any technical requirements to meet the testing environment expectations. The day before the test, you should feel confident that all is ready to go. Make sure the room is set up according to the proctor handbook. And at this time, the proctor manual will begin to give you some directions so you know what the first step is to verify that exam roster, which you should now be able to print off from the NHA website and will hold all of the expected candidate names. If anyone is missing from this list, they didn't apply in time and will need to have an alternative testing date set up for them at a later time. If there are any discrepancies, for example, someone on the roster who shouldn't be, then the institution needs to contact NHA before test day so we can fix it. Refer, of course, to the technical requirements in our help center. Ensure all computers, including the proctor station, meet the minimum requirements. Verify that pop-up blockers are turned off on all computers to be used for testing. The Proctor Handbook has all of this, including any additional room requirements, such as a working wall clock that will be visible to all exam candidates and proctors. Prepare any additional supplies, such as scratch paper, to be readily available to provide on exam day. For example, for auditing purposes, scratch papers need to be numbered following the proctor manual guidelines, and you'll need to review the test plan for the exam you're proctoring so you can relay to students how many questions and the length of time for the test. On exam day, prior to the test starting, have your proctor manual nearby, but be sure you know your own login and password. You may be on a different computer in the testing lab, and it probably won't have any of your saved information. Check your proctor exams field in your login that the exam is listed and available to run. Remember, if the exam status listed in the upcoming exams field says closed or open, then you'll need to contact NHA to get that test finalized to run. Have your exam roster printed and verify that all students are eligible to take the exam. Confirm the candidates using proper identification, a government-issued photo ID with their signature and permanent address. Assign the scratch paper following the proctor manual guidelines, and advise before we get started that all students make sure that they know their passwords, and also maybe use the restroom before the start of the test. You should probably too before we get everything going, right? Following the proctor script in the manual, it helps to ensure that all goes as smoothly as possible. You'll need to log into your NHA exam, have everything ready to identify students as they log in, monitor students at all times during the test, using both the exam feature through the website, as well as physical observation. Occasionally move around the room during the test. Monitoring students from the back of the testing room can provide a good point of view for observing student activity. When the test is ended, collect the scratch paper from all candidates. And if you're the only proctor for the exam, candidates can't leave the room once testing begins, except for emergencies. And all of them need to wait until the exam is completed before they can be dismissed. I'd like to ask another quick polling question here. Just to see what you guys think. Based off of what we've talked about so far, what do you think the most common question is for proctors, the most frequently asked question? So if you guys could just take a look there, of the options listed, what do you think is the most common issue or question that we get calls about? Let's see what you guys are thinking. Leave this open for a few more seconds. We've got about half of you here. Anybody else want to pop in? Okay, we're at 2/3, so I'm going to close it up in about 3 more seconds. Answer if you still want to. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, so of the options available, the most common suspected answer is something to do with exam dates. Well, congratulations, you guys. That is correct. 45% of the inbound questions on proctoring are related to opening, closing, or adding exam dates. Whew. So if you don't see that request new exam feature from your account, then you just need to talk to your institution to get that feature added. But remember, exams need to be scheduled in advance. This is not something you do on test day. So if this is something that needs to be added, we have how-to resources for you on scheduling exam dates, but this is something that should be done well in advance. So Good job, you guys. We had a really good response on that one. Okay, so we are going to move into some of the most frequent questions or issues that could arise during an exam experience. So I'm supposed to proctor an exam today, but there are no sessions showing when I click proctor exams. Okay, well, check the exam status, right? And that upcoming exams feature. Remember, if it says closed or open, then the test is not going to run that day. You have to contact NHA to release the test. And the reason why this might happen would be if, for whatever reason, the test needed to reopen to add additional students after registration closes. It's one of the big reasons why we really, really want students to have that done well in advance, the week before the test. So once that's moved over to that sent status, that's when everything should load for you. I can't get past the proctor signature page. Oh, well, make sure you type your full name as you set it up in your NHA account. And make sure that you type the date format with the 2-date month, 2-number day, and 4-digit year. That is the most common reason why, for whatever reason, that doesn't load. When my students log into their exam, they are getting a message that there is no proctor available. Make sure that you are logged in before your students. If they've received that message, they need to then log out of their account and start again once you, the proctor, have been logged in and are ready. So it's a timing issue. You need to have your login set up and everything ready to run before the students. The proctor manual does walk you through this, but sometimes it still happens. So that's the most common issue there. Not all of my students are showing on my proctor page. Well, if you've selected multiple exam sections, perhaps there's more than one test running at that time, try checking the toggle bar at the top to see students in different sections. You can also direct the student to try to log out and log back in again, and then if you refresh your screen, that should capture them on your exam list. My student's exam stopped because they accidentally clicked outside the browser. That's part of our safety requirements, right? If they're clicking outside the browser, we're going to stop their test. Well, click ignore on your side if you know it was a mistake, and their exam will resume. The student may need to refresh their page and log back in depending on what happened there. So if that ignore doesn't automatically work, have them do that. Clicking into their exam on the banner from their home screen, you can then hit resume. So this will all monitor for you automatically. Something is wrong with my student's computer and they need to log off or change computers. That's okay. Have them log back in as quickly as possible at a new computer or desk, and you'll be able to hit resume to restart their exam where they left off. But the time for that student does continue to count down. So we want this to happen as quickly as possible. I had to stop the assessment. Can we restart? You can. Log back in, have your students do the same, and they will show up under stopped assessments. Click no action and then resume to restart their exams where they left off. My student has questions to go back and review, but now she can't get to them. Well, questions can be flagged to get back, but you have to use the back arrows within the exam itself, not the browser. We actually recommend not leaving any questions blank. Using the back arrow in the browser rather than the exam will finalize the score. And if that student has unanswered questions, they'll be lost. So we recommend that candidates answer all questions to the best of their ability, only returning to flagged questions if there's time at the end, and they have to use that back button within the exam itself. A student didn't show up. Can I allow another student who isn't on the roster to test instead? No. Only candidates who are on your roster can test that day. Exam IDs are tied directly to that one candidate for testing. The missing candidate will need to reschedule in order to test. And the candidate who showed up that day may not have their exam registration completed. They might not be eligible. they'll need to review their exam options and ensure that they are ready to go again for a different date. Okay, so that was our most frequent questions that we have. I know we're going to get into Q&A here in a moment. We're going to have some open question time. I wanted to launch one more poll here for everybody. So I'm going to push this out. I wanted to see if anyone out there still feels that they would like to be contacted for additional assistance related to proctoring the exam. Just take a minute and let us know if you need any additional training, and we'll be able to follow up with you through this particular poll. Just going to take a quick minute if anybody would like additional training. Can leave this open for another maybe 10 seconds. So if you do need it, put your name in there now. All right, almost there, and close it up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. All right, thank you guys so much for that. Those people that answered yes, you will be receiving some one-on-one follow-ups. We'll get stuff scheduled to make sure that you have all of your questions answered. Okay, so for those of you who can't stick around with us into Q&A and the Kahoot game, remember Susan said if you stayed this long that you could be potentially eligible to win a gift card. Well, if you have to drop before we get into it, we're going to post a survey link in the chat box. Fill that out and you'll be able to get your name in that drawing. Remember that we're going to be putting you in a drawing for a $50 gift card. Woot! So we should be posting that in the chat box. Remember also we've been recording and we'll be sending out a copy of that recording to all registrants, even if they couldn't join us today, and we will be posting it online. And anyone who requested direct contact will be hearing from somebody hopefully within the next week or so. Okay, so as we move forward, we are now going to play a little game. So anyone who, if you have a secondary device like a cell phone or an iPad, if you haven't already downloaded the Kahoot app, it should be free. That's the easiest way to play the game, is to have that as an app. But if you are not able to do that, you can go to kahoot.it, and that should give you the option to join a game. So I'm just going to bring that game up here real quick, and we're going to post it on the page so you can see it. Let me just get that open. So if you've not played Kahoot before, Kahoot is a game of speed and accuracy. So that means that the first person to answer the question correctly will get more points than the second person to answer it correctly. So those of you who have that open, we're going to do the Q&A when we're done here today. Go ahead, and the pin is right at the top of the screen. You should see it there, 759-0527. Karen, Ken, oh, look, you guys, you're doing great. So we're going to play just a really brief game and see how much you guys retained from our call today. And then when we're done with this, we'll get into some Q&A at the end. Great, great, great. So we're just going to give everybody a little second to get in. No, not everybody has to play. Of course, if you don't want to, that's cool. But we're going to do this before we get into the game or to the Q&A. I know we still have quite a few people on, so we've got about half of you here. If anyone is still trying to, if we get started and you haven't quite logged in yet, this pin that you see up at the top will actually be at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen for the questions. So the questions and answers will be on the screen, but if you have you on a cell phone or an iPad, you answer from that device, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and get started unless anyone is shouting out that we need to hold off for just a second. Susan, think we're good? We go ahead, get going?
Yep, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, diving in, here we go, we're gonna get started. So again, the Kahoot pen is in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, but we're gonna go ahead and go through just a few questions, see how we do. All right, multiple choice. Which of these people should be able to proctor an NHA exam? A clinical lab supervisor, a course instructor, a program director, or a librarian? Who should be in that testing space? Only one correct answer here, folks. Almost there. And bing, the librarian is the one of these four who is okay. Remember that the concept of conflict of interest. Anyone who has had direct contact with that candidate who's really a part of that learning process should not be in the testing space. So good job, you guys. Let's see how we're doing. Well, Erin is at the top of the pack. Jen, Lori following up real close. But you can see whoever answers first correctly gets more points. So let's see how we do in the next one. When should a proctor first begin preparing for the exam? The day before the exam, 60 days before the exam, 30 days before the exam, or 1 week before the exam? What do you think? What is that right timeline to really start preparing for that test for you as a proctor? Looks like we're still missing a couple people to submit their answers. That countdown will keep going until we get everybody's response, just so you guys know. 30 days, that is correct. 30 days before the test is when you have ample time to make sure everything is set up correctly. Good job. Oh, Erin kept the lead, but Lori is creeping up on her. Let's see what happens next. Multiple choice. Ooh, there's more than one possible correct answer here. What resources are available for proctors? Proctor manual and handbook, incident request forms, walkthrough PDFs and videos, test plans. More than one possible correct answer here. Four seconds left. Trick question. All of these are available for you as proctors. And I don't know if anybody noticed, if you answered more than one, you actually get quadruple the points. So let's see how, oh, Erin, Joanna took the lead here. All right, well, let's see how we do moving forward. We're halfway there. Who can proctor students remotely? Only PSI remote proctors, anyone who has completed proctor training. Who is allowed to proctor remote tests? So if you're in the game, but you haven't answered yet, we're going to count down until you do, or you got 30 seconds. Oof, only PSI remote proctors. I can't stress this enough. You should only proctor here. I'm actually going to turn my camera back on here. Okay, look at my face. You should only proctor students who are in front of you. Web-based proctoring is not your responsibility, right? Only approved remote proctors, not you, can proctor remote tests. Really big deal there. Great. Okay, moving forward. Susie, I'm not sure. All right, let's see what we do next. Multiple choice. When do exam rosters close? The day before the exam, 3 business days, the day of, or the week before the exam. The exam roster. So the last day candidates can apply for the test. What did we say? The week before the exam, that is correct. Now, 3 business days before is when the roster finalizes, but the roster closes the week before. Good job. Okay, Joanna's slowly creeping back up there. Let's see, true or false. NHA provides a full script for proctors in the proctor manual. True or false? Ooh, you guys are answering that one real fast. Nicely done. Three more seconds, and true. Good job. The full proctor script is in the proctor manual. We also have a handbook, but that does not have the script in it. Good job. Suze is like rocking this lead, but Tanya, look, you're only 30 points away. It's anybody's game, truly. Okay, what status does an exam need to be to run on test day? Open, closed, sent, or it doesn't matter? What do you think? What is the status of the exam? Remember, you view this through the upcoming exams button. Still missing a couple folks, couple answers. Sent status. It needs to be in sent status. We have to have sent you the exam. So if it is in open or closed, it's not going to run on exam day. You would have to contact NHA to make that work. Sent status is what you're looking for. So one of the biggest things I call in, oh my gosh, the exam's not there. I don't know what to do. It's just not been finalized because someone had to change the registration. So that's the biggest deal, sent status. And you can check that the day before. So be sure you do that. Oh, well, Joanna just took the lead. All right. Well done, Joanna. Final question is multiple choice. There's more than one correct here. It's okay for the proctor to add time to an exam to help out, provide 2 pieces of paper to testers, leave the testing area, and an exam if someone is caught cheating. There's more than one correct answer here. Remember, you get multiple points if you answer them all correct. What do you think? What is it okay for the proctor to do? Ah, good job. And an exam if someone is caught cheating, provide 2 pieces of paper to testers. Adding time is not something you have the authority to do. Only NHA can do that. And leaving the testing area is only okay if you have another proctor there. All right, you guys, great job. Let's see how we did. All right, Tanya, 3rd place. Congratulations, Tanya. Woo woo. Reese in 2nd place, and who is in our number 1 lead? Dun, da, 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 da. Susie, Suze. I don't know how to pronounce that, but congratulations. Well done, everybody. I hope that solidified some of kind of the key things from today's presentation. We are going to actually go into and see if there have been any kind of big questions or recurring questions, things we want to solidify. So guys, this is your open Q&A time. What questions do you still have?
So Laura, just a quick heads up, taking a look at the questions that have come in, there doesn't seem to be a lot of recurring themes. I would say one of the biggest things that we really need to emphasize again is around remote proctoring only being available through PSI. So please do not remote proctor your candidates at school. That is not a capability that proctors have through NHA. That is only through PSI. We do have a question of where can test plans be found. We'll post a link to that. Those are on nhanow.com. So on our website, under each certification exam link, you can find a link to the test plans, and we will have somebody post that in the chat. If one of our panelists wants to just post the link to our website, that would be great.
I'm actually going to open up here. So I've logged in. Now, this is not just a proctor access, but this is what it looks like when you've logged in if you're like an instructor or if you have the ability to schedule exams. But for almost every role that you could potentially own, this review the NHA test plans should be right here. But also I mentioned the library of how-tos. So you're going to have your most used how-to resources based off of your role. So if you're a proctor, it's going to be, you know, how to become a proctor, how, you know, where are those different pieces. But we have a library of additional resources right here, and all of the test plans are also listed in there. Susan was mentioning out on our main website, we do have under any of our certifications, you can go into any of them here, and it will take you to an option to look at the test plan. So it is, all roads lead to the test plan, right? There's lots of different ways to get there. Hopefully that was helpful.
And then there was another question, but water is really a key topic. So that has been asked a few times. Food and drink are not allowed in NHA's exams, and that is pretty standard across all standardized exams, that you can't bring items into the testing center. And that is really about controlling the opportunity for cheating. I've been working in the standardized exam world for my entire career, and I will tell you, people get super creative about how they cheat, and a water bottle label can be one of those ways. So it's not allowed unless medically necessary and pre-approved. And I would guess that primarily it's to control that testing environment and ensure that we minimize all opportunities and ways that students can and do find to cheat the system.
Right. Most exams are only about 2 hours long. So, you know, that typically is something that they shouldn't be an issue, but yeah, there's no food, no drink, no purse, no phone, none of that can be allowed in the testing space.
And that is still true. Question just came up in chat. What if we provide the water? The answer is no.
Nope.
Solid, complete, 100%. Please abide by those proctoring rules.
The only thing you provide to students are 2 pieces of blank scratch paper, which have been labeled, right, per student. So that's it. That's all they can have. Pencil, paper, and then for billing and coding candidates, they have to have their coding manuals with them, but that's
Exactly.
a unique scenario. Mm-hmm.
And then a question did come up. What is the retention policy on the scratch paper? So how long should they keep it? They do collect it.
And you should destroy it that day. You collect it and it should be shredded or put into a destroy bin.
Yep. Shred it or tear it up.
Yep.
Candidates cannot leave to get a drink or use the bathroom. Is that correct? That is 100% correct. Students cannot leave the testing environment until they have completed the exam.
Correct.
Do we keep the rosters for a specific amount of time? You do not have to keep the rosters. Those are stored in our system. So you do not need to keep those rosters. And let's see. If candidates bring in a purse or phone, are they able to leave it on the proctor desk?
Your testing space, there are some kind of prerequisites in the handbook about what that all needs to look like, what things need to be available, but there should be a secure area outside of the testing space for candidates to leave their personal items. That's kind of a standard practice for that space, but a lot of that just depends on kind of what that testing area looks like. But I don't believe that there are, thinking back, any specifics about that, but I think they're just not allowed in the testing room at all. Mary Monroe, do you know any different than that you can think of?
They should not take it into the room at all, but I know that if they do, proctor should collect them up front, and they don't have access until everyone has completed those exams.
See, I knew you'd know. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
So there's 2 questions that follow right after each other. Can a tester be late, and can testers leave when the exam is over, even if everybody else is still testing? So
the test start time is based off of when you approve them to start. So can they be late? Potentially. It depends on your institution's approval of that. That timing for that candidate starts when you start their exam. So it's not like a group start time per se. Now, is it a best practice to allow candidates to join an existing exam late? That can be a deterrent to the other candidates. We would not recommend that be allowed, but that anyone who shows up late reschedule that exam for another time. And then the other question Mary was about, or Susan was about leaving. The only time that a candidate can leave the exam when they're done is if there is a second proctor available to escort them out. Otherwise, they have to wait until the final exam is completed. Now, I know we're right up on that hour. I think we all just heard our ding-ding-dings, but we will stick around here for a couple more minutes for any additional questions. But thank you, everyone who was able to stay with us as long as you were. We'll continue to ask questions as needed here for the next few minutes.